Chapter 4, Job Satisfaction. Class agenda. So you look at job satisfaction. Why are some employees more satisfied than others? There could be a whole lot of reasons, infinite number of reasons why. Some of the things would be value fulfillment, satisfaction with the work itself, different moods and emotions. How important is job satisfaction? Application, tracking satisfaction. So it's amazing when you see people who have job satisfaction, how they feel about what they do versus others who don't. And there are numerous reasons why. I'm going to talk about some of those. Integrated model of organizational behavior. So when we look at the organizational mechanisms, you see the culture, the structure, leadership styles and behaviors, leadership power negotiation, teams, process communication, teams, characteristics, diversity, and then you see then you see individual ability, personality, cultural values, and then individual mechanisms, job satisfaction, stress, motivation, trust, justice, ethics, learning, and decision making. And then you look at the outcomes, individual outcomes, job performance, organizational commitment. See, this is tied to it. You've heard this before when people say a happy employee is a productive employee. It's true. When people are happy, they are productive. And these things are related. And if you have a leader or manager who does not understand that, I'll show you somebody who's probably not going to be in management very long. Job satisfaction is a pleasurable emotion state resulting from the appraisal of one's job experience based on how you think about your job and how you feel about your job. It's totally subjective how one person can feel about their job and have total satisfaction. Someone can be right beside him or her and hate their job because people are different. So what attracts one and works for one does not work for another. What kinds of things do you value in a job? What is it that makes you satisfied? When you look at these, what is it that makes it? I'll give you an example. If I think about that for myself, I think of jobs which allows me to operate with some autonomy, not necessarily work to a time like a 9 to 5, but more or less task oriented versus I work till I get it done. And when I look at my careers, they were pretty much like that. And so with a lot of people, you have to find out what type of person are you. And that's going to determine the type of job satisfaction that you need. Because if I was a person who had to sit behind a desk from 9 to 5 and do accounting or make widgets, I would go crazy. Commonly assessed work values. So when we look at these things that are commonly assessed, we look at things that you see like pay, promotions, supervision, co-workers, work itself, altruism, which is helping others, moral causes, status, and environment. When I think about as a professional business coach and executive coach, when I work with people, these things all fall into play, and these are things that are very. Give you an example. When people are younger, one of the things they put more emphasis on is just pay. As they get older and they acquire families and stuff, they start thinking about benefits and promotions and security. All these things come into play. Value fulfillment. So you see, we have a value, like an equation here. Value perception theory. Job satisfaction depends on whether you perceive that your job supplies the things that you value. Does your job supply what you value? And what do you value? Some people may value, money. Some people may value promotion. Some people may value camaraderie. Some people may value good relationships with the supervisor. Some people may value opportunity for advancement. So the value precept theory of job satisfaction. So you look at this equation right here, and you can see over here on the left when it talks about pay, promotion, supervision, co-worker, work, and you see the red over here, how they come out and say, and there you look at those, ultimately they point to overall job satisfaction. Where do you stand with these things right here? I tell you what, if someone doesn't have, give you an example, if something's really important to a person, for instance, like satisfaction with the work itself, and they make great money, got great benefits, I'll show you somebody who probably won't stay even for that because they're not being satisfied. Correlations between satisfaction facets and overall job satisfaction. So when we look at this, we see the green represents a strong correlation, yellow represents a moderate correlation, and red represents a weak correlation. So we don't even see that here. We look at overall job satisfaction. And so you look at pay, promotion, supervision, coworker. Work itself, you see that is probably the most important one right there. And I'm gonna tell you, number two, number two is supervision. It's probably be and it's legit because there's an expression that says people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. Satisfaction with the work itself, very, very big. You see why? So you look at job characteristics theories. Jobs are more enjoyable when work tasks are challenging, fulfilling. Do you keep people challenged and stimulated, or is it fulfilling? If you do, that's what a lot of people keeps them going. You see characteristics that make some jobs more rewarding than others: variety, identity, significance, autonomy, feedback. When I looked at how I operated my two careers that I retired from, one of the things that I found it was, particularly with the federal government, is I had a lot of variety, had significance, and I had a lot of autonomy. Job characteristics theory. So when you see the variety, identity, significance, autonomy, feedback. So you see, look at that. The first two, variety and identity, significance, go into meaningfulness of work. Autonomy, responsible for outcome, feedback, knowledge of results. And you see how they all point to job satisfaction. Knowledge and skill, growth, need, strength down below. Assessing growth, need, strength. So when you look at this, I won't read through this. Just pause and read through yourself. It's kind of self-explanatory, so I don't need me going through that. Growth, need, strength as a moderator of job characteristics. So we see high growth, need, strength, low growth, strength. Satisfaction with work itself. Levels of 5 core characteristics. So when we see the low, we see the high. And when you talk about the job with satisfaction, right there, you definitely want to see the high, the green, if somebody is actually in a position or if you're in a position. Job characteristics. So again, this is something you can actually take a test right here. You can pause this and do this little assessment yourself to see what type of person you are. Job characteristics theory. Exercise. Job satisfaction across jobs comes to consensus on a satisfaction potential score. When you look at this, for instance, like a third grade school teacher, a stand-up comedian, a computer programmer, a president of the United States. So when you look at the job satisfaction, it's like, what is the potential job satisfaction for each one of these positions? And well, it can be any number of things depending upon who the person is. Realistically, you can have a person who's the president of the United States. It can be very happy and operate in capacity, even though it's a stressful job. And then you could have someone else who's in it and very miserable. Mood and emotions. And this is something that plays a lot into the workplace and people. Even the most satisfied employees aren't satisfied every minute of the day. No, nothing is, in other words, there's no perfect job. You will have your days when you feel like, you're on top of the world. You have your days when you feel like you're in hell, just because of what's going on. Satisfaction levels wax and wane as a production of mood and emotions. So, and based upon what you do and what you're doing at the job, let's say if you have a job and you have multiple responsibilities, well, your satisfaction levels will go up and down based upon which responsibilities you're working on. If you're working on, let's say you have 5 responsibilities and one of them you absolutely hate, well, the other 4 you may love. So that's what we're talking about with these mood and emotions. Hour by hour fluctuations in job satisfaction during the workday. So you see at the bottom, you see different tasks and different duties. And you can see as you look at the chart, how it peaks and valleys, how it goes up and down based upon what someone is doing. So here's something too to understand. You have different kinds of people. And when you have different kinds of people, you have these different moods and stuff. And this is something that you will see in the workplace when you deal with other people. And you can see all the way from activated to the very top to deactivated at the very bottom. Obviously, not where you want to be or where you want to see folks. So when you look at intense, positive mood, enthusiastic, excited, you see happy, cheerful, pleasant. You see serene, calm, and content. These are the kind of things that you see from folks when they are actually liking where they work or they enjoy where they work or what they do. Quiet, still, inactive. So you see deactivated. This is somebody that's kind of like, well, you know what? I'm here, but I'm not here. Um, Now you start looking at the things that's not as good on the other side. You see boorish, sluggish, grouchy, sad, hostile, nervous, annoyed. So when you see these things from people, there's a couple of things when I've noticed when I've seen these from folks in the workplace. Sometimes it's not work. Sometimes it's a home life, or sometimes it's emotional and mental. They have something going on. They may be on medication. So you can't always assume it is the workplace. You actually have to, as a leader, you have to investigate to look into it to see exactly what is it. Why is someone grouchy, sad, and blue? Different kinds of emotions. So we see different kinds of emotions. We see joy, pride, relief, hope, love, compassion, or and all of these right here, I would consider to be positive emotions that you see people experience in the workplace. Now, here's our negative emotions we look at. You see anger, anxiety, fear, guilt, shame, sadness, envy, disgust. When you see these, if you see them too often, if they reoccur too frequently, that's a sign. That's a bad sign. It's a red flag that something's not right. And you have to look into those to try to figure out what that is. Sometimes there are people sometimes who actually lose their jobs and stuff because of how they actually operate with the negative emotions. Mood and emotions, feelings versus showing. So we see emotional labor. Emotional labor is when you basically taking on the emotions of someone else, try to help them or whatever else. And you're trying to be there for them to help them through something or to deal with emotions. And if you're not careful with emotional labor, what can happen to you is you can end up helping them but hurting yourself because you begin to suffer. You have to be careful about that. Emotional contagion is when you have a group of people and they all start having sharing similar emotions because it becomes contagious. It may have started one or two people, now it's like 10 people kind of feeling that way. It's a phenomenon and it has been documented and it does happen. Bonus assessment, emotional labor. So pause right here and go ahead and do the assessment for the emotional labor. Why are some employees more satisfied than others? Well, because they're different people. Everything doesn't work for everybody. And for some people it does. When you have to figure out when something is not working for people, you have to try to figure this out and look at it, see, I'll give you an example. What if their satisfaction is based upon their pay, but they're actually not getting paid well? Well, you see, that's something you may be able to address, particularly if they're actually doing good work. Effects of job satisfaction on performance and commitment. So when you look at job satisfaction, job performance. Job satisfaction has a moderate positive effect on job performance. People who experience higher levels of job satisfaction tend to have higher levels of task performance, higher levels of citizenship behavior, and lower levels of counterproductive behavior. So this is the positive stuff right there. When you see that, when people have the job satisfaction, it would tend to take care of other things. Now, we look at that, represents a moderate right there. When we look at represents a strong relation, job satisfaction has a strong positive effect on organizational commitment. People who experience high levels of job satisfaction tend to feel higher levels of effect commitment and higher levels of normative commitment. Effects on continuance and commitment are weaker. So you see, this is a win-win situation when you have high levels of job satisfaction. Life satisfaction, the degree to which people feel a sense of happiness with their lives. Remember I said sometimes it's not always tied to the job. This is what we're talking about. If someone's life satisfaction is not good, I'll give you an example. Things should be going really good at work, but their life is in such shambles and it's such in a bad state that they can't perform well or do well at work because of what they got going on. I'll give you an example. I remember a coworker one time who was a pretty good guy, was a pretty good worker, and all of a sudden his work went down, he wasn't reliable, and his mood changed. Well, we found out he was getting a divorce, and that's how it affected him at work. We'll skip this here. Application, tracking system. So think of work that you do. How well does each of the following words or phrases describe your work? In the blank beside each word or phrase, write N for yes, Y for yes, N for no, question mark. So you can pause and you can go ahead and do that. You know, that concludes this chapter.